back to Dorothy's Dungeon Details. So, unfortunately, I did not get a chance to do recording yesterday. Work killed me. So, you're going to hopefully have 2 videos today, as long as everything goes as planned. Today, we are going to be doing the Grey Slate tiles. And we're going to go ahead and get started. And I'll show you, just as last time in the earthen tiles, I'll show you the pictures from the Kickstarter where I got my inspiration for these tiles, as well as the final result that I came out with. And hope you like it. So we're set up here, and this is the final result that I came up with. I know the shine on that came out really bright with the Modpodge. I think that was because I had to do a couple coats and re-wash it and stuff. So, but this, my version definitely came out a lot darker than the inspiration that I was going for. And I think that was more because I was trying to apply more of the gray to it to get it more gray than brown, like the name states, versus what the actual image is out there. But I like the result that it came out with. It definitely does give me a like dirty dungeon feel. So this was the end result for what I came up with. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So just like our piece on the earthen style, you're going to go ahead and start off with black bombing the piece. And once again, to do the tavern side was about 2 coats of spray paint, and the dungeon side was about 4. I used the same spray paint as in my, what's it called, the ColorPlace. I'm sorry, I forgot to include that in the thing. You can also use just a base black to do it if you need to do hand painting and you can't spray paint. So you can have your black bombed piece ready to go. And for the first base coat, we're going to be doing brown oxide. And just like I said in the last video, you can use the top of the cap for paint instead of having to put it into a paint palette. Which, for those who did watch my previous video, I may say some of the same things that I said in my previous video as far as tips. That's just in case if anybody new's watching and hasn't watched those videos before, they can get the same tips as well. So we're just doing a single coat here, and I do still have the magic of time, Kevin, so we won't have to wait for paint and dry time. But for those who are working along with it, I usually do about 30 minutes for any full coat coverage and about 5 minutes when we do the dry brushing coats in between each to let them dry out fully. But you do want to make sure that each coat dries fully before you start on the next layer. That way your paint colors won't be mixing. Okay, so there is base coat number 1. And bam, dry. So, slide this over here so dry. Go ahead and do a second coat on that. Which on this you are wanting you're wanting a mix between a base coat and an overbrush. So basically you're not trying to get too far down into those crevices. That one I just kind of had extra paint, so I just blurred it out. But you're mainly trying to just do the top layer. You want those bottom crevices to still retain some of the black coloring a lot better than the top does. We will be doing a wash though, so that will help darken up those crevices at the end if you do happen to get any paint down in there. So I don't know if this is the case with all of the brown oxides, but mine seems to be the thickest paint out of the colors that I use the most. I don't know if that's the case for all brown oxides, but just a heads up, that's one reason why I didn't have to refill my lid like I did when I was doing the earthen tiles with the nutmeg. The brown oxide seems to be a lot thicker, so Let me know in the comments if y'all have the same thing, or if y'all's brown oxide seems to have the normal consistency. Because maybe mine's just starting to get to where I need to get a new one. I'm not sure. But there's second coat and second coat dry. Okay. So next step is going to go similar to how we did the earthen style, where we're going to go ahead and move on to dry brushing. Swap my brush. And it is optional to change brushes. I like to switch to this brush for dry brushing. It has a lot stiffer bristles. The brush I was using just a minute ago was the normal, and just a normal plain brush. The bristles are actually white originally. My paint water is very black, so it kind of tends to stick on there a little bit. But they're a lot stiffer, and so I like that for dry brushing. But you can use the same regular brush as normal. So the first coat of dry brushing, we're going to be doing the Pewter Grey. You're going to want some scrap cardboard or paper towel to dip off your brush. Okay. You're just going to get very little paint on there. And dip off most of it. And going to start with a dry brush. This first coat of dry brush is going to be a very heavy coat. You're wanting to make sure though that you hit all of those raised textures bits, as well as some of the corners on the tiles. As you can already see, some of the dry brushing over here is already starting to dry out. When I'm doing the dry brushing, I try not to go back into the actual lid to get paint. I try to just use the paint that I've dipped off over here. And that way I don't pick up a whole lot more paint. Okay, there we go. And there is with completely dry brushing. My glare is serious today. I hope y'all are able to picking that up. Glare today is bad on this, but okay, so I'm going to go ahead and swap to the next stage. So the next layer of dry brushing is going to be with our Granite Gray. And that is here. Which, if you did watch my slate video, I noticed that on my second dry brushing, I did not get my paintbrush dry enough. And so that was messing up my dry brushing coat a little bit on my second layer. So make sure that if when you rinse out your brush between dry brush colors, that you get that brush good and dry and you don't have a whole lot of water left on there, because that is going to dull out some of your color there when you're doing it. Okay, so once again, just a little bit of paint there. This color is going to be very stark on there. When we do the wash though, it will dim out some. So as you can tell, so there's the original piece, just so you can see that in frame for reference. Or with a final piece, I mean. So as soon as we go to put this on there, you can already see that's a very bright gray. But as you can tell on here, there's not very much of that bright gray on there. So you can see a little bit over here, but that's about it there really. So don't worry about the fact that it seems really bright right now. Okay. So back and onward. So this one is going to, you want to go a little bit between a medium and a light dry brush, if that makes a whole lot of sense. You want to hit quite a bit of the piece with this, just because, like I said, it does go away quite a bit. But you do want to leave some bits like there, where you can still see some of the underlaying gray. If you want to do any areas like cracks, I would say that this is your color to go ahead and hit those spots with, because this will be a nice good accent for those cracks. Okay, there is going to be the Granite Gray, and there is my dry piece. Which, like I said, okay, no, that's just water. The dry brushing does dry really quick, but one reason I'm swapping pieces on there is just to make sure that my piece is completely dry. I usually go ahead and let them sit longer when I'm not in a rush, and just let them sit while I go back and do whatever I got to do, cooking, cleaning, and all that stuff. Which actually reminds me, if anyone was bothered by the sounds in the intro, that was my washer. I had forgot to turn it off before I started recording, so sorry about that. But our next step is going to be our wash. So far I know this tutorial seems quite a bit like the earthen style. We do have a step in a minute that is going to be a little bit different. And it is an optional step. You don't have to do it. Now, we're using the black wash here, which this time you can actually see a little bit of the color separation on there, which is one reason why you want to make sure that anytime you're using your washes, you make sure you shake them before you use them. That will reintegrate the colors back in there. You can see how it's starting to go away there. Here's a good example of color separation there. You got the dark blue up top and the almost white down there near the bottom. And this was our cool blue wash that we made during the prepping washes video. Okay, so black wash is ready. Now, for my result, I came up with this much darker scheme for the Grey Slate. If you want to stick with the more brown shade of the Grey Slate for the sample video, I suggest using the nutmeg, or is that it? Or not nutmeg, light mocha wash that we made. Or not light mocha, my bad. Where is it at? Here it is. This one, the brown oxide wash that we made. So if you want to stick with the more brownish shade, use the brown oxide wash. Otherwise, you can stick with the darker shade, and that'll be the black wash. Okay. So, once again, I like to use the palette for my washes, and that's mainly so that way, because of how liquidy it is, you won't get very much using the lid itself, or using the lid. For instance, I've just shook this bottle quite a bit, and there's almost nothing on there. Like, you can still see right over in this area over here where there's pure lid going through. So that's just how thin it is. Okay. So this wash is going to be slightly different than our earthen style, in the case that we're still going to go ahead and do our cracks as we did then. So you start by just lining it through, which it is helpful to use an angle brush, but you can use these normal flat one as well. The angle just helps it glide a little smoother, in my opinion. So get through our cracks, and then you're going to do the nice solid coat over the top. And unlike the earthen where we took the paper towel and dabbed it off, in this case we're going to go ahead and just let it completely dry like this. And what that's going to do is create these more dark patches in there that are going to give a little bit more detailing and shadow to the piece. Like I said, if you want to make it brighter, you can dab it off. If you want to, if you're using the brown, that'll accentuate the brown oxide that we used for the base color. If you're using that brown oxide wash, that'll more highlight those pieces. So like I said, that's up to you. This is going to be the way we're going to do it for what I'm showing here. Is just completely let it dry. This layer took about, I want to say about an hour to fully dry everywhere to make sure, because of how thick some of the splotches are. Okay, so apparently my camera hates recording once I get to the wash. This time I caught it though, so we haven't moved any further. So like I said, it's going to take roughly about an hour for this to completely dry. So just move that to the side, and I will keep going with my magic of camera-ness. Let's actually put the towel. Okay. So there is the wash after it's completely dried, and the next step is a optional step if you're trying to take away a little more of that brown and make this tile just a little bit darker. So on this piece, it has just this one spot right over here to me that has a bit too much gray, or a bit too much brown, I mean, sorry. And I want to make it a little darker there, so I'm going to use this pavement color. It's a little closer to the goal of what we're going for, and this time we're going to be stippling that on. So whereas dry brushing, I'm using the same brush I use for dry brushing, but whereas dry brushing you're moving the brush across, this time you're more dabbing on, kind of like you would if you were doing sponge painting. Okay. So dab some off there, and which is similar to what I'm doing here basically, and it's just going to create little bits of speckle like that in those areas, but it's going to get down in between those textured pieces, so it'll cover up some of that brown color. Okay, and so there, it's lessened up the amount of brown, and it gives a little bit more texture pieces there. So now I'm going to take that and I'm just going to kind of stipple a little bit throughout the piece to help blend that, so you don't have just that one section that's got there. But I'm going a lot less in other areas, since the other areas aren't as, we don't need to cover up any of the other areas really. And this is where if your wash got a little too dark in areas, you can also do the same thing there to help brighten up those areas. Okay, so there is going to be a piece, and you can see there's a lot less brown there now. So there is the piece dry. And like I said, it doesn't make a huge difference doing this step, so you can completely skip it. It's just for more, I was trying to avoid a little bit more of that brown when I was doing it, to bring it more to that gray slate for what the name is called. Okay, so once again, this is another optional step. This is if you want to do walls. Originally I intended to do the walls with the pavement as well. Unfortunately, it blended in a bit too much, in my opinion, to the actual tile itself, so I went ahead and opted out to using the black for the walls. Ooh, that was the wrong brush. Okay. And then for your walls, it's all a matter of choice, basically. There are, you can do L corners, you can do just straight edge, which go here. 4 hallway T. Let's see, what am I got over here right now that I'm making? We're going to go ahead and make a hallway piece here. So for the hallway piece, you're using these little grid lines as your guides, and you're just going to paint the outside edge on there. So, oops. If you just wanted to do a single edge, this would be the full area that you would do, and that would give you just a single wall piece. The benefit in doing this versus doing the 3D walls, if you're needing walls, is that when you have like 2 hallways or something next to each other, these blend right together there. So you don't have to worry about it messing up your map. So another option you can do is the like intersection T. And for those, you paint just the 2 corners here. And they'll give you an entrance there, and an entrance here. Which for a 4-way, then you would just paint just the 2 corners on this one, and you wouldn't have those painted. But we're making a full hallway, so we're going to go ahead and paint all the way across there. Like I said, you're just following along those lines. There it goes. And there is our hallway piece. Let's let that set to dry. So here is the end result there. And this one is one of those T intersections. So there's one last step for your pieces, and that's sealing it in with Modpodge. Or you can use basic school glue or a spray sealant. But I like to use the Modpodge. Make sure that if you use Modpodge, you make sure you get that matte version. Try to prevent the shininess on your pieces. For some reason, this one still came out pretty shiny. I think that might have been because I had to do 2 coats, because I did the pavement on the walls instead, and then I changed it to black. So the center got 2 coats, 2 heavy coats, I should say. So I think that might be why it came out really shiny on this piece. So I have this one. This is just a very old brush that's starting to wear down from what I've used. And I just use it as a glue brush now. Which, as long as you rinse it out, you can use it for a pretty long while as a glue brush. But you're not having to risk, if you accidentally forget to rinse it out, having to throw away a really good brush. Because you forgot and left the glue on there, and now the glue won't come out. So you can apply 1 thick coat like I'm doing here, or you can apply 2 thinner coats. I like to do just the 1 thick coat just for time issues basically. But I try to make sure I get the edges. Don't have to worry about painting the edges, mainly because since they're the puzzle pieces, they're not going to be showing as much, so I don't bother with them. But yeah. So I paint the little edges here so you don't have to worry about any of the paint chipping off if someone picks it up and catches it. My players tend to throw my pieces around whenever we're doing cleanup stuff. They just kind of throw them across the table to me. So I try to make sure to seal in the paint as best as I can, so that way I don't have any chipping on my pieces. Okay, so there is the thing, and there it is dry. Like I said, hopefully this one won't turn out quite as shiny. If it does, I may need to see about getting a sealer or something to dull it down a little bit. The next coat we're going to be doing is actually the next style, that we're going to be doing is actually going to be a ice theme. And so for those, if you wanted to go ahead and get your pieces prepped, we are going to be using a white bomb instead of a black bomb. So we're going to want to switch to a matte white spray paint instead of the matte black. So that is going to be it for this video. I hope you enjoy, and I hope you check out our next ice theme.